Welcome back to the Rain Race podcast. Unless it's your first time tuning in which case, welcome to the show where Stu and I talk about IMSA and the World Endurance Championship. And we had another second of the season, and the last one of the season, I guess, fortunately, doubleheader weekend to recap of races over in the World Endurance Championship and IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship, of which you're continuing a streak of attending the IMSA races. That's, 3 in a row now for you?
3 in a row, and it will stop at 3, unfortunately. But three sunny races in a row.
Well,
with portions.
Watkins Glen had his moments.
Yeah.
I'd say. And then I'm sort of carrying the weight in the middle with the World Endurance Championship over at Le Mans, but no attendance in Brazil for me this year. So, anyways, we're going to recap both of those races. We got a couple of news stories to cover at the end of the episode, as title would imply, and any questions that you would like us to try to answer in the meantime, leave them in the chat, and we'll try to get to those towards the end of the show. I'm going to start things off here. I'm going to talk about WEC 6 Hours of Sao Paulo.
The Rolex 6 Hours of Sao Paulo.
There you go. Thank you. I've mentioned I want to start trying to get the race recaps a little bit shorter with you. And luckily, I'm going to hold my end of the stick here. Let's start out with the positives here. I think, despite my main criticism of this race, which we'll get to, this race did have its moments of excitement. There were moments, and I'll give it credit. Somebody actually in the chat mentioned that this was another WEC race that got to play out naturally over the course of 6 hours. We didn't have safety car periods interrupting the race. We did have virtual safety car / full course yellows where the entire field was neutralized, but pretty par for the course with what we've been seeing in the World Endurance Championship the past few seasons. If they don't need to put a safety car out on track, they won't, and the race will progress as it naturally should. I will give it credit for that. And I will give it credit for the fact that there were moments of excitement in both classes, particularly in the LMGT3 class. I think LMGT3 was the class that really carried this race. Hypercar class, though, also had its moments of excitement. A couple notables that I want to call out there. We did have on-track battles for both the lead and then also the second and third place positions between Porsche and Cadillac over in the hypercar class. We had some battles later on in the race between Peugeot and BMW. We had the 51 Ferrari and the Proton competition privateer Porsche going at each other's necks during the race, which ended up in a penalty for the 51 Ferrari. It's not the first, not the last time you'll probably see that car getting the book thrown at them for something like that. But I think overall, LMGT3 was the start of the show in this race. And not that that's a negative by any means. Certainly, it's great when that class is able to showcase its beauty. We've seen some barn burner LMGT3 races since that class's introduction into the championship last year. And particularly, the race for the final podium positions was a great show at the end of Sao Paulo. And I think that's really what carried, like I said, carried the rest of the show. Talk about a couple other notables here before I get into some criticisms, we'll say. I think, well, let's start with a fact here. This was the first race that we saw Lexus finish on top in the LMGT3 class. It's been a long time coming. If you looked at last year's results, you wouldn't really think so. But with this season, you and I have been talking since the season opener at Qatar, that it was a matter of time before Lexus were able to find their way into a victory in the World Endurance Championship. We've both picked them numerous occasions this year. And I think you were the one who finally got that one right. I don't remember if you picked the right car or not.
I did. I nailed this race. This was a perfect race.
Absolutely. So retire while you can, I guess.
I will be.
But yeah, a great showing from Lexus to sort of carry the strength that they're on this year. And as we mentioned, complete 180 from where they were a year ago. Even at this time, post Le Mans, they were starting to pick up some better performance last year, but this year they really look like they are a proper contender, potentially for the LMGT3 championship at the end of the season. We'll have to wait and see. Any thoughts you want to carry on there?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we've seen that this is a car that's proven that it can win in IMSA. We've seen that plenty over the years, but now we've finally seen this car, take that next step forward um, and really emerge now as one of a regular contender on the WEC calendar. You kind of alluded to, we've seen good runs out of them recently. We saw the 87, with a solid running at Le Mans, and picked up some solid points there. They've now jumped up to fourth in the championship standings with this win. So not I don't think anybody's picking them to catch Manti in the championship, but they definitely look to have emerged nicely and are obviously seem like a regular contender, race in and race out, which is a far cry from where they were last year. But yeah, I think you touched on sort of the LMGT3 class here, and I didn't get to watch the whole race myself, but I do understand the battles that we saw take place in the LMGT3 class. Right at in the kind of final minutes of the race, we had the 10 Spirit of Le Mans car, which was driven by, is it Eduardo Barrichello?
Yep, fan favorite there.
Yes.
Racing Spirit of Le Mans. I'm going to correct you here.
Oh, my bad.
Because if they're going to make a point about it every single broadcast, I'm going to make a point in correcting you.
Yep, that's that. Yep, got to keep me honest. So Barrichello going up against regular fan favorite on the calendar in Iron Dames there for the final podium spot. A great pass that was made for that final podium spot. Good, hard, clean racing between those two cars, and I will say as well, it's nice to see. It's not like Lexus was a clear runaway for this class by any stretch of the imagination. I know that the winning margin would say that, a 37-second margin is a fair bit, but it's nice to see there's a lot of different manufacturer representation here in the top four, Lexus, Corvette, Aston Martin, and Porsche. So it's nice to see that, kind of play out, where we've seen some races where, some one manufacturer might dominate, but that definitely wasn't the case. And like you said, there was we saw some good racing here, especially in LMGT3.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that this was you talk about Lexus's success over in IMSA. There's another manufacturer that also sort of finally broke through this weekend at Sao Paulo, that being Cadillac, of course, in the hypercar category. Maybe not in the past couple seasons, but certainly back in 2023, Cadillac, a very strong runner in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. Recently, their victories have been a little bit more thinly spread, unfortunately for them. But finally, with Team Jota, this is also Team Jota's second victory in the hypercar category after their win with the Porsche 963 at Spa last year. Picking up not only a win, but a 1-2 for Cadillac here at Brazil. In a race that, unfortunately for fans, was a bit uncontested for them. They did have the Porsche Penske cars, both 5. The 6 wasn't really quite a factor. It was mostly the 5 the entire race that was putting up any sort of challenge. The 5 car did break out into an early lead for the first couple of hours in the race, and then we're able to hold on to that for the first third. But once the 12 car got back into the lead, they pretty much ran away with it. And then the final minutes of the race, we did get a battle for second place between the 5 and the 38. I want to get your thoughts, though, on Cadillac's breakthrough before I sort of segue this into one of my main talking points out of Sao Paulo.
Yeah, I probably have a feeling where this is going. The Cadillac was strong, of course. We've been you've watched their performance gradually improve as the season has gone along. They had a strong-ish Le Mans. I mean, they locked out the front row. That's definitely a nice feather in their cap that they walked out of there with. Didn't get the end result, of course, that they wanted, but Cadillac's performance over the season has continued to get better. It seems like the team is learning that car. They went out and they executed. It did everything that they needed to do in Sao Paulo, and walked away with the win. I think they were impressive this weekend. Also to see Peugeot and the 9X8 have a solid get some solid results as well was good to see. So yeah, Cadillac definitely a big standout here in hypercar, but yeah, want to give the shout out as well to the 9X8. It's been a tough time for them with the various iterations of their car. So a 6th and a 7th place, 2 cars in the points is a nice weekend for them.
Yeah, good shout out there. Aston Martin as well, although they didn't
Yeah.
finish in the points with either car, were certainly a lot more competitive this race than they have been for the first few of the season. So give a shout to them as well. Now, I'm going to tread lightly here. I'm not going to say what everybody's thinking, but the problem I did have with this race, and it's actually not a problem that I had with it just this year. I think last year this race followed a very similar trend, which is we talk about the pendulum effect of balance of performance. We've talked about it in IMSA, sometimes also in the WEC, where you have the first few races of the season, or at least a streak of races, go one way, and then all of a sudden there is going to be a change that's made that completely swings things in the other direction. Sort of what we saw last year at this race. I think last year, I wouldn't say this race was a standout race in the season by any means. It was really Toyota running away with it in the hypercar class. This year, Ferrari, who have been in a league of their own, literally, in the World Endurance Championship this year, they were undefeated with those 3 cars up until this point. And some of those races uncontested, really, were kind of nowhere to be found. The 83 car was carrying its weight. They were running up in the top 10 for a little while. The factory cars were also doing decent as well. The 83 actually ended up finishing inside the points, picking up an 8th place finish here. But overall, I can't say that I'm going to look at this race and say that it was anything incredible, in my opinion, at least from the perspective of the hypercar category. I think what we saw this year was very similar to last year, like I said, where unfortunately, with this race being sort of smack in the middle of the season, the results that we've seen the earlier parts of the season, we're now starting to feel the effects of that, where the pendulum has shifted maybe a little bit too far. Now, I'm also looking back to races that we had seen at Brazil previously. I'm looking back at 2013, 2014. And while those races certainly aren't as fresh in my memory, I don't remember those races being anything incredible either. So I'm not going to sit here and say that this is all, BOP sucks. This whole reason that this track wasn't putting on a really close finish. I don't think it's reasonable to assume that Interlagos is going to be as closely contested as a race like Le Mans or even Spa. I would usually say is one of the standouts in the WEC. Which is a bit ironic because everybody in Formula One thinks of Interlagos as one of the key races of the season for excitement, but at least in the World Endurance Championship hasn't quite been the case with the top class, at least. I think I'm going to leave it at that. Unfortunately, though, like I said, it just wasn't a very compelling race, I would say, in the hypercar category, unfortunately. Between Cadillac and Porsche, those were the only 2 real manufacturers that I saw with a chance of contesting the front of the field. And then some of those other strong runners like we've seen earlier from the season were nowhere to be found. And Toyota, who've been struggling all season, go ask David Flory what he thinks about
Yeah.
the race that we had at Sao Paulo. He might be a little bit more critical than I've been, but
He probably
I'm going
needs
to
to
leave it.
tread lightly.
Yeah, well, I'm allowed to say the word. He's not.
That's
I'm going to leave it there, though. I think overall this race was okay, but certainly for future seasons, I don't think we're really seeing everything that we could out of this race, out of this circuit, that in other series is putting on some of the most exciting moments that we see all year.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think, like I said, I didn't get to watch, the race, this race live or anything. I've lived it through the highlights, and after watching the highlight pack that the WEC puts out, I came away from it as, oh, that was the condensed highlight pack from this race. Like there was some the good moments in LMGT3, like I alluded to, but as for hypercar, there wasn't a whole lot that was in that highlight pack. So that's every race can't be the most exciting race in the world, right? Like we're gonna have some races that are just a little bit average, and that goes for any racing championship. So all that we can probably hope for is that, if there is anything with our favorite three-letter word that's going on that the sanctioning body can learn from, hopefully they learn from it, and we go into, what is it, is it Fuji next?
Yep.
And we head to Fuji and with a clean slate, and we get a solid race there. So that's all we can hope for, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I just hope for future seasons we see a little bit more potential out of this race. I think that
Oh,
Brazil
Coda.
as a what about Coda?
Isn't it Coda's next, isn't it?
Actually, you're right. Yes, Coda is
September, yeah.
next. Sorry, I was thinking.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Ezekiel.
yeah, because Coda's early September and Fuji is middle.
Yeah.
Thank you. I what you've got to remember is this race is the race after Le Mans. This is where, if
Yeah.
Le Mans is the highlight race of the season, this is where you're going to want to try to capitalize on that success, all the gain in viewership that you've brought in there. So we'll see. Maybe third time on the trot next year will bring a more compelling race in the hypercar class. But the past 2 years I've just been a little bit critical of it because I don't think we're seeing the full potential out of this track. And I know what
Yeah.
this track does offer. You can just look at the
Yeah.
LMGT3 class if you want any evidence of that. So we'll leave it there, I think.
All right.
You, of course, were, while that race was going on, unable to watch because it was, help me out with the sponsorship on this one, but it was the IMSA race over at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, with the headliner class being the LMP2 class. And I know we
Yes.
spent some time talking about, these IMSA races where it's nice to have races where the GTP class is not the highlight of the show. I mean, they're going to be carrying the most weight in both championships right now, just based off the nature of that's where a lot of the excitement is, with those top cars and top teams. Not only did we get to see the LMP2 teams take the spotlight, though, we also got to see some of the LMP2 bronze drivers take the spotlight. Of course, most of those drivers are starting the race. And
Is there a hint of sarcasm there?
I was going to say for some better moments, for some worse, but we'll get into that as we go on through the rest of this race recap. I want to get some of your thoughts, though, from the track. Of course, this is a staple race for you to attend every year, and I know you weren't able to attend the full race weekend this year, but general thoughts from you from CTMP.
Yeah, I think overall it was, another good weekend at the track. The fans turned out again. There's it until they bring GTPs back, there's always going to be the people that stick their heels in the sand and they're like, I'm going to boycott the race until they bring GTPs back. But you know what? For every fan that does that, there's two more that are willing to come through the gates and check it out. I was able to talk with some people, both that I knew and that I didn't know at the track, that it was their first time at CTMP. And, everything that I heard was positive about the weekend. We had some good racing that took place between the Support Series and, of course, the WeatherTech Championship. Generally speaking, we had some good weather. It was pretty darn hot over portions of the weekend, and we had a Watkins Glen-esque torrential downpour just a couple of hours before the WeatherTech Championship race that really got a lot of people perked up, a lot of ears perked up at the thought of the bronze drivers starting the race in the wet conditions on a green track. But overall, a great weekend. It was good to see a ton of people out at the track, and I think the most interesting moment for me of the weekend was came on Friday morning. There was and it kind of just it puts everything into perspective, puts the entire weekend kind of into perspective for you. There was a food delivery truck in the paddock, and there's kind of a couple of different sections of the paddock at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and it's kind of in the upper paddock near where the pit lane exit is for cars coming off the track. And this tractor trailer just took out one of the telephone poles in the middle of the paddock. There was so it fell over. The power lines were down. It was actually blocking the normal road that the cars would use to take out of the pit lane to get back to their respective paddocks. It was down to a very narrow section that cars could travel to get to and from paddocks. So it was there was traffic jams between sessions. It was very interesting, and it just made you realize that, how something as simple as a telephone pole coming down could really throw, everything into chaos for a few moments there on Friday. But yeah, to sum it all up, a great weekend at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. And like I said, despite the GTPs not being present, still a really good fan turnout. And I can only imagine what it would be like if we had the GTPs there as well. It'd make the weekend that much better, but still a good weekend.
Yeah, I think you're talking about people some people say, I'm not going to go to the race because of the GTP class not being there. Didn't we have an attendance record recorded there last year? Yeah. I don't know about this year. I don't know if those numbers were put out yet, but certainly doesn't look like it's hurting the overall fan base that much.
No. People want to be at the track. People want to be there in the paddock. You still get the same experience walking around the paddock and interacting with folks. So you can't take that away.
Yeah, right. We talked about the LMP2 class being sort of the headliner show here, at least in terms of that's who's going to win overall, unless we have a complete disaster. We did have some moments with the LMP2 class. I know we've talked, and I was sort of, you mentioned my sarcasm. I was sort of hinting at some of the driving standards things that we had going on this race with some of those bronze drivers early in the race, but it actually wasn't just the bronze drivers that were getting into some trouble in those LMP2 cars. Once we saw some of those higher ranked pro drivers getting in for the final stint, the race didn't run free of any incidents after that. I'll just say that. But just a couple of the standout ones that I wanted to discuss. The first one for the CrowdStrike APR Racing number 04 team, George Kurtz had a fairly large accident, which looks like you have something to comment on there. I'll toss the mic over to you.
I mean, if a tree falls in the woods but nobody was there to see it, that brings up that dilemma, right? Like I didn't see a single camera shot of this actual accident. All we saw was the aftermath. I think. I don't think it was actually captured on any camera, which that doesn't take away from the fact that there were parts of that car thrown all over the place, and it was clearly a hard, heavy accident. But just seeing that, it was surprising to me in the moment, and still surprising now that it's the year of 2025, and we have still these spots around racetracks where we can miss stuff, where we don't get coverage of of certain things. So that was a little bit surprising to me. But yeah, it was a hard hit for George. That car was thoroughly destroyed. But good to see him get out of that car and walk away.
Yeah. Maybe a race that nobody seemingly wanted to win over in LMP2 as well. We also had a crash from the lead for Tom Dillman in the Inter-Europol Orca as well. Later in the race, of course, that came maybe as a bit of a surprise once we get some of those pro drivers in the car. It just looked like he just sort of lost it on his own. I'd have to go back and watch it again, to be honest with you, to see exactly what went wrong. But I don't know if he was trying to brake and the car just locked up and went straight into the tire wall. And ultimately, that was day over for them.
Yeah, it was. I do believe so. So Tom was actually taken to the hospital after this one. The accident took place with 15, 17 minutes or so left in the race, and didn't look like it. We've seen a decent number of these accidents in IMSA where they're just able to pull the car out, get it off to the side. IMSA would throw a short yellow. It was a short yellow anyways because we were just coming back green from a full course yellow. But it seemed like it was just going to be a short yellow situation. Maybe we'll get like a 5, 7, 8 minute, sprint to the finish here. But unfortunately, Tom was injured in this, and he later mentioned, I believe it was in a social media post that he made, alluded to a mechanical failure on the car. And it certainly did look like a mechanical failure there of some sort. But regardless, it was a very hard hit into the wall in turn 3, a pretty high speed corner that you're going in there as well. So that was certainly unfortunate for him. But to kind of piggyback off what you were talking about with some of the incidents that we saw, there was an incident earlier in the race. The only big incident, I would say, apart from George Kurtz's accident for the bronze drivers, and there was a few LMP3s trying to navigate around the Inception Racing Ferrari down in Moss Corner. It looked like, I think the Pratt Miller entry tried to dive up the inside and almost kind of make it 3 wide, which is not necessarily advisable. And they ended up causing there was like 4 cars or so that got a little bit of fender bender damage out of that. So unfortunate for them, but generally speaking, the LMP2s were fairly well behaved. We've definitely seen worse, but yeah, unfortunate for whatever happened to George Kurtz there, as well as that little incident down in Moss Corner. Those were definitely, yeah. I don't know where I was going with that, but I'll leave it there.
I'm glad you brought up that incident in Moss Corner, and the reason I didn't bring it up, to be honest with you, is because I forgot all the P2 cars that were in it. We had, as you mentioned, quite a few that were in there. I think the 04 was in that one as well, if I'm not mistaken.
They were technically the one that made contact with Inception, but they had the other one up their inside.
The real winner out of that whole ordeal, though, was the Inter-Europol LMP2 car.
Yeah,
they were the ones who really made it through, and that's what put them in the position that they were in the later stage of the race, which, of course, then we just talked about how that went south. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have a whole lot else to discuss on the incidents that we saw over in LMP2, but unless you have one more point you want to throw in there.
I was gonna kick off with the positive.
You're going to segue, but I'm going to steal it from you. We did see amazingly, because this was brought up on the NBC broadcast, and I didn't even realize this, the first win for the 99 AO Racing Spike the Dragon LMP2 car. With the team that they have over there, it was a surprise to me that this was the first victory for that car. They've had races in the past where they've definitely been strong, but haven't had some incident go wrong one way or the other, or just come up short certain other races of the season. But PJ Hyatt, Dane Cameron, finally securing that victory after the late race trouble for Tom Dillman, in a race that I guess was a long time coming for them.
Yeah, I think really probably the most impressive drive of the weekend for me of all of the classes came from PJ Hyatt. I mean, we've seen him put that car on pole numerous times last year. He put the car on pole here last year, but he didn't even get to turn one before he had racked up a penalty for that car. So I think this race really goes to show how much PJ's matured as a driver in the short period of time that he's driven not only an LMP2 car, but just race cars in general. He was gapping the field. He had like a 15 or a 20-second gap after the first stint that he had built up. He was the clear class of the field of those bronze drivers, and being able to maintain that track position, something that he wasn't able to do last year, and be able to maintain that track position at a track like CTMP that can be a little bit tricky to pass at. Hand that over to Dane Cameron. I mean, that's all that Dane could really ask for, and I think PJ did a really good job. Dane Cameron in the in the second half of that race. They did well as they had a good second half. They got caught a little bit. The 43 was able to jump them on the final pit stop. And that's how the 43 ended up taking the lead of the race. And then we had some full course yellows that came up. But yeah, the Inter-Europol also a solid race. Dan Goldberg, Tom Blomqvist in United, who ended up finishing in second. You got to look like they had a good, strong weekend as well. And then rounding at the podium in LMP2. Now, I hate to just keep saying, some strong runs here, but, the 74 Riley had another solid weekend. They were caught up in that, that little get together, the LMP2 gathering down in Moss Corner early on in the race, and they were able to rebound nicely for a third place finish. So, there was a lot of impressive showings in LMP2. And the one thing that I will say as well, we had a lot of very new drivers to LMP2 machinery and IMSA LMP2 racing as well in this race. We had 2 rookie bronze drivers in this race. So for us to be coming out of this, we had 1 full course yellow when the bronze drivers were in the car. And I think that's that's good at the end of the day, that everybody was generally speaking behaving themselves.
Yeah. And you sort of touched on it there a little bit, but not only did we have some of those new bronze drivers, we also had some of those GTP drivers stepping down to the LMP2 class for this race, like we had seen last year as well. Renger van de Zender and Tower Motorsports, you already mentioned, and United. Tom Blomqvist making the step back down to LMP2. So nice to see some of those guys in the LMP2 class for the finish as well. A bit of a GTP reunion with Dane Cameron now in his full-time position over there as well.
Yep.
How about the rest of the classes, though? We had, of course, the 2 GT classes on track, GTD classes, making up the rest of the field with the lack of GTP. Want to get some of your thoughts from, we'll start out here with GTD Pro.
Yeah. GTD Pro had, kind of what we've come to expect now out of a GTD Pro race. We had multiple different manufacturers that were in the hunt, multiple manufacturers that led the race. It was just another good race in GTD Pro. Some good battles. We saw BMW up at the front, leading the first stint. We knew the Corvette was going to be strong here throughout this race. I mean, they came home in second and fourth at the end of the day. Porsche, I mean, what can you say about that 911? It is a very strong car. They had another strong showing. A little bit surprising that we saw even the Lamborghini up and running as well as Faf was at portions of this race. And we'll talk more about Lamborghini when we get to GTD, but maybe they didn't quite have the race winning pace, but they definitely had solid pace in this class. And of course there's, the likes of Lexus as well. Lexus, typically strong at a track like this. Didn't really have incredible pace this weekend, but
They
I
gave it
think the
all to the
real stuff.
WEC team.
Yes, yes, they gave it all to the WEC team. You're right. I think the real surprise of the weekend was Ferrari. Dragon Speed, the 81 car of um, Jean Marco Alto, I believe, and I can't remember his first name. Last name's Costa. I
Albert
we'll
Costa.
get that. We'll get that in a minute. Albert Costa. Yes. I was gonna say Antonio, and I'm like, no, that's way too Italian. Albert Costa. So yeah, they had a bit of a surprising result here. I don't know if anybody was truly picking Ferrari here. A little bit of a wild card. We only saw one Ferrari 296 on the grid here last year. So we weren't really sure if this is a track that was really going to suit the car. But man, Dragon Speed has done a really, really good job with this GTD Pro program, going up against the likes of, programs that have been ingrained in the GTD classes for years now. And the impressive run that Dragon Speed has once again had was pretty impressive in my mind. So yeah, what else is there to say about GTD Pro? It was just more close battles, nose to tail battles for most of the race, and we saw lots of comers and goers, pit strategy being on full display as well. So a fun race to watch in GTD Pro.
And I think most notably kept it pretty clean as well. We couldn't say that entirely about some of the GTD Pro races we had seen more recently, like at Detroit. Yep. I'm looking at you. So to get a nice full clean race in for that class really showcased what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, everybody finished on the lead lap. Nobody really got in any huge trouble throughout that race. So yeah, you really got to see that race with the intervention of some full course yellows in particular towards the end. But we really got to see a nice race unfold there in GTD Pro.
Yeah. Oh boy, how about GTD then? You sort of teased it here a little bit.
Yeah, GTD was an interesting one. I don't. Again, we kind of had the comers and goers in GTD as well. But really the memorable portion of the race for me in GTD was the fuel strategy and how that was playing out in the final sort of hour of the race. We saw most of the field opt for a fairly conservative fuel strategy, but there was one car that didn't opt for that conservative fuel strategy, and that was the 45 Wayne Taylor Racing Lamborghini. They were going to bet on trying to stretch that final stint out and hopefully catch a full course yellow or something along the way and be able to stretch it to the end. We saw that the Lamborghinis had pace here in GTD. It's very likely that had we not had they were the full course yellow, but the 78 Forte Racing Lamborghini was in position. It was a Lamborghini were running 1-2 in GTD at the time that the 78 crashed, and it was very likely that we were going to see a Lamborghini one way or another take the class win here, which is something that I don't think a lot of people expected. I was able to talk to a couple of people, over the past week that, running Lamborghinis in the series. And I don't think anybody was, super enthused about the pace that they felt like they had coming into the race. But showing up, unloading off the truck, they were competitive over the weekend, which is all you can ask for. And then add in some competitive speed with a well-timed pit stop or a good strategy decision, as we saw from the 45, and you could put yourself in position to win this class. And that's exactly what the 45 did. Danny Formal put in a good first stint, although he did end up getting spun around in a lap one incident. Was able to recover nicely from that. And then Trent Hinman, great driver that's going to, plenty pleased with Trent being your closing driver here. So a great run for the 45 Lamborghini. Caught those full course yellows at the end of the race just right. It's the 4th year in a row we've had a full course yellow in the final 26 minutes of the race. So they played that strategy nicely, and Wayne Taylor Racing with their Lamborghini picks up a big breakthrough win from them. They showed solid pace at various times through the season, and are finally rewarded with a good result here.
Yeah, I think that spin to win was maybe a little bit understated by you. To me, I think that was probably the moment of the race.
Fair. Looking back on it, you're right.
After that lap 1 spin with the 021 for Triarci Ferrari, with Danny Formal at the wheel at the time. Like you said, they had to play an alternate strategy. I mean, they didn't really have to, but that's the move they ended up making. The fact that we had a couple of full course yellows at the end of this race, as you sort of alluded to, I think really saved them. Gave them time behind the safety car to sort of catch up on where they were behind on fuel compared to some of the other cars. So just a really well executed race from the Wayne Taylor Racing Lamborghini here. And as you mentioned, I think a lot of people probably weren't expecting to see Lamborghini that strong with a potential 1-2 in the later stages of this race. But to me, that's the story I'm taking out of this race, that spin to win. Because they were, I guess you could say, second to last in the GTD class. And this is a track that, let's not forget, as high speed as Motorsport is, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park is.
No, you're pleasing the Canadian fans.
I know, I got them on my side now. It's not really a track that has incredible passing opportunities for the most part. So being able to execute that strategy to your advantage, like we said, cars really fell into their favor at the end of the race. But if you win a race, I guess it doesn't really matter how you win that race.
Exactly. The moment that just sticks out to me with the 45 team was, the heartbreak that they had at the Rolex when the rear suspension broke on that car with less than an hour to go, and while they were leading the class, that heartbreak isn't going to be fixed by this win, but it's certainly gonna help when they look back on the season. So good to see them. Really for the drivers and the whole team after that lap 1 incident, it could be easy to just roll over and go, okay, this isn't our race, but to persevere and come through that on the other side and end up picking up the win. It's a good result, good for them, and good to see.
And let's not forget the most important stat of all, which is that since you and I have been doing this podcast since the end of 2023, we've had 2 drivers on the show. We had Connor Zilic and we had Danny Formal before the 2024 Daytona 24 Hours, and both of them now have a win in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. Didn't take Connor very long to pick that one up after being on the show. So if you're a driver and you want to come on the podcast, we just need to say that we have a 100% win percentage of drivers who have come on the show in the past. So give us a ring. Our DMs are open.
It is definitely us that is getting you those class wins. Absolutely.
It's a good omen. Any closing thoughts from you though on CTMP?
Just closing thoughts. I just wanted to also mention the other podium finishers because I didn't in the Pro and GTD classes. The 4 Corvette and the 77 AO Racing Porsche rounded out the podium in GTD Pro. I'd have to look at the championship standings. I know one of the Corvettes is still, I think it is the 4 that's still leading the championship hunt there. And then in GTD, we had the 57 Windward Racing Mercedes and the 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus round out the podium. Windward is leading the championship standings in GTD once again. So the championship hunts are all nice and tight in both in LMP2, GTD Pro, and GTD. And this is kind of like the halfway mark of the season for those classes. They still have plenty of running left. So we're shaping up for some good championship fights there.
Yeah. You're making me look bad. I didn't give the mid-season championship update for the WEC. I'll circle back to that
Uh,
after Coda.
Bingo,
Um,
exactly.
all right. Move on to some news stories for this episode. We got some, is it too early to say silly season news in
No, no,
the
no. This is prime silly season.
GTP slash hypercar categories in both championships, really. Let's start things off with Porsche here. There was a rumor going around. I don't really want to say a rumor. I guess this was kind of known from the start of the program. But when I was walking around Le Mans, there was some discussion going around on what the future of Porsche's program at the 963 looks like. When that program was confirmed back in 2021, it was a 3-year program. So started off, of course, 2021, 2023, 2024, 2025. Left us curious where we might see that car next year. Of course, in the past few seasons, they've been in the trustworthy hands of Penske Motorsport, running those dual factory cars in both championships, where they found mountains of success on both sides of the pond. Although there's really one main thing they're missing with that program, and that is, of course, a Le Mans victory. I guess the only chip that they still need to get off their shoulder, really.
Yeah.
We had some news come out around the Interlagos / Canadian Tire Motorsport Park weekends. I'm getting politically correct again here with the naming.
You can call it CTMP for short. That's acceptable.
Yeah. Where we might see those programs next year. It sounds like we will be seeing an extension of the Porsche Penske Motorsport programs in both championships until at least the end of the 2027 season in both championships. We also did see some news. This was specifically, I read this from SportsCar 365, that there is an additional customer team that may be interested in running a 963 over in IMSA next year. Hinted that that team is already, at least to their understanding, already a Porsche customer over presumably in IMSA. So take a look down at the GTD Pro or GTD classes, really.
I wonder what prehistoric creature that could be.
And then finally, the last piece of it being that any additional customer car next year would be from a new customer. It wouldn't be an extension from, say, a JDC. Although they also did note that JDC might be trying to double up on that program for next year as well. Quite a bit to unpack there. So I'll jump back to talking about Penske and the factory program. To be honest with you, I really wonder if we'd be talking about the same thing if Porsche had won Le Mans this year. I wonder if that's really the thing they're waiting for, because you've got to look at the success of that program, what they've shown. They already have a championship over in IMSA. They already have a championship in the WEC. They've won the Rolex 24. They've won the Sebring 12 Hours. What do they really have left that they're vying for in terms of top class endurance racing accolades? Of course, probably the biggest one is the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So I think for them, continuing with both programs, you might just say, okay, why not run just the WEC program then, and then maybe transition IMSA over to full customer. Let's not forget that Porsche every year since they've started that program has had that third car over in the WEC, that third factory car for Le Mans. And I really think if they want to try to vie for a Le Mans victory, they're probably going to want to have that third car. Look, it was a third car that won the race this year in the hands of Ferrari. So,
yeah, true.
Continuing that IMSA program, keeping those drivers on the roster, and then having that car you can probably easily port over to the 24 Hours of Le Mans, I think is probably in their best interest if they want to have as good a chance as they can for getting that final piece, that final trophy on the shelf. Those are some of my thoughts. I want to get some of yours before we talk about the possibility of additional customers, at least over in IMSA.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that stood out to me in reading, the various articles that have, since been posted about this from all the other outlets. I know SportsCar 365 has one. I saw Racer and Daily Sports Car, all have them. Definitely suggest going and checking those out. But the thing that's really stood out to me is, the possibility of, I thought I saw as early as next year that we could see the IMSA program be reduced to an endurance cup program, which would be unfortunate for sure, and not something that I think a lot of fans would like to see. But it is it something that realistically could happen? I suppose. I mean, you talked about how Porsche's kind of winning a lot of, accomplishing all the goals that they're setting out to do. And, to a certain extent, I think it's important to remember with all of this news that, these are very regular discussions that should be taking place, on the board of these huge car manufacturers that are spending a ton of money to do this, making sure that they are getting the exposure, they're getting that return on investment, that they're looking for. Now, I think to continue down that train of thought, with the increased interest that we've seen in the sports car racing space, and the interest that continues to grow, I think there's a very strong argument to be made there that, from Porsche's perspective, like, this is still would be a very worthwhile investment for them. Now, is it still a very worthwhile investment at the full, amount that they're putting in right now, or is a slightly reduced investment make a little bit more sense? Or, does it make sense to just support customer programs? I think that's ultimately kind of the questions that we're going to see unfold kind of in front of our eyes in the coming months. But, hopefully this all, this discussion takes place, and we hear a 3-year extension or something like that for Porsche's hypercar and LMDH program. So yeah, it's news that we knew we were going to have to hear about at some point, right? Like, we're not going to go on forever with all of these manufacturers in the sport, but Porsche is certainly one of the iconic ones. So I think everybody wants to see them remain on the grid. One of the things that I saw mentioned was, Porsche was one of the manufacturers that expressed interest in bringing the LMH and LMDH platforms and kind of having just one unified platform, at some point. I wonder if there's discussions about that are influencing any behind the scenes, decisions on this. But that's probably something we'll never know about, truly. But just kind of another factor in this puzzle.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing that they've brought up in the past. Now, we've got to look at the big picture here, where the hypercar regulations, I know we're still waiting on GTP confirmation of this, I believe. But at least in the WEC, we have a hypercar extension out to the end of 2032 now.
Mm-hmm.
How many of these manufacturers are going to be around at the end of that period? One thing I noticed specifically about Porsche, and has been true for at least the past couple of I don't even want to say top class prototype programs they've run, because I'm even talking about the RS Spider program here as well. But Porsche generally seems like when they join a sports car racing in a prototype program with a factory effort, they will come in, take a year to get up to speed, then they will start completely dominating, winning everything they can, checking off all the boxes that they want to check off, and then they leave. And we've seen this with the RS Spider program back in the LMP2 class, starting out in 2006, 5. What year did that program start? I should know this. That's my damn favorite prototype of all time. 2005, I think. Someone help me out there. But ending at the end, at least in the factory capacity, at the end of 2008. We saw that same thing with the 919 program, starting out there in 2014. Running at 15, 16, 17, won Le Mans a few times with that car, 3 in a row, and then championship a couple times as well, pulled that program. I know that was sort of in the peak of LMP1 costs getting out of control, but nonetheless, look at who dropped out of the grid and then counter that to, say, Toyota, who has still consistently been on the grid since 2012. I've noticed that trend, though, with Porsche, at least with
Okay.
these
Yeah.
factory prototype programs, is once the boxes are checked, once the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, they say, all right, we've had some fun, we've had some success, and we're going to let other people pick up the reins from here. So I do wonder if this is sort of a similar thing to what we're seeing here. I don't see the confidence in this program going the distance, though, based on everything that we've seen here so far. And I do wonder how that program would be restructured afterwards. With the, at least in the case of the RS Spider, we saw that car have continued success in the hands of customer cars for a couple seasons afterwards, over in the American Le Mans series, but also over in the Le Mans series over in Europe as well. So with this being a customer-focused program, I could see that car continuing in customer hands pretty successfully, to be honest with you. But for the factory program, I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe next year spells the end for that.
That what would happen? I know that this wouldn't be an issue in IMSA with customer programs, exclusively running the 963. But if eventually it got to that point in the WEC, I mean, how does like because right there's
Yeah, you just scared me. I didn't even think about that.
yeah there's no factory presence at that point, so that would be
I don't know how you handle that, though. Because if you are, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to, at that point, you're going to look at people like Proton and say,
yeah
get out of here because the factory car isn't here anymore. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you can really do that.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how healthy the grid is when if it comes to a time where Porsche does pull the factory support from the WEC program, which seems like it would be the last program to go based on what we have heard so far. It seems like be reasonable that the IMSA program would be the first one that would get reduced or eliminated because, as you alluded to, they're trying to win Le Mans. But yeah, that was a thought that crossed my head. So hopefully it doesn't come to that anytime soon. But that would be an interesting development.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting that we get sort of that confirmation from them that, yeah, we'll be on the grid in 2027 comes a few weeks after losing Le Mans by 14 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is coincidence, but
Yeah. Yep.
to me, that's the way that reads.
Yeah. I that's a good call out as well.
Yeah. All right, let's continue on here. Let's move from Porsche.
Do we want to speculate any on those customer teams, or
well,
it's pretty
I think
simple?
you sort of threw it out already. I think.
Yeah.
But I know AO Racing is the team that a lot of people are looking at. I mean, really the most realistic one, I suppose, you would look at over on the IMSA side. You look at how strong they've been over in the GTD Pro class. We're out in GTD previously. We have that LMP2 team right now. Look who drives for them in LMP2. A guy who had a lot of success over in the 963. That kind of works out.
It's almost like they knew what they were doing.
So we'll see. I guess we'll wait and see if that comes to fruition. It would be a fan favorite if we saw some livery like that on a GTP car. I can tell you that much.
So, something that I saw, I think Anthony Florio, a good follow for any sports car fan on X. Kind of talks about a lot of different hypotheticals or just observations, and he pointed out a very interesting thing here, and that with the success that PJ Hyatt has had in the LMP2 cars, he is young enough. I think he's in his early 40s. So there could be a reasonable path that he gets promoted to be a silver driver at some point. And the LMP2 path in IMSA doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense for him. And perhaps a GTP entry there, maybe alongside, Dane Cameron or something like that could make a lot of sense. So, I mean, hopefully we, I think one of the real feel good stories in sports car racing as a whole the last few years has definitely been AO Racing and sort of that refreshing take that that they've brought with that car and or with their cars. So I think everybody would be rooting for AO to make that step up. But of course, running an LMDH versus an LMP2 is a bit of a different budget requirement. So we'll we'll see if that comes to fruition or not. But interesting that throughout all of these discussions, there's also been conversations going on about Porsche hinting at an additional a new team in IMSA that's interested in running one of the 963s next year. So I guess the real question there would be, what animal, what creature is going to be on the car, but that'd be a lot of fun to see AO make the step up to GTP.
Yeah, so I did look at it. PJ Hyatt's 41.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not going to discredit PJ Hyatt, especially after the drive that we saw from him at CTMP. But what I will say is we've seen this once before, also in a 963, ironically, with Ben Keating making the step up into the JDC car, right?
Yep.
At the Rolex 24.
Yeah, it was JDC. Yep.
Back last year, 2024. And sort of mentioned how it was a big step up from even driving an LMP2 car. I know these cars sort of look similar to a newcomer, but you have to realize how different the LMP2 and GTP cars really are. You're talking about a couple 100 kilograms of weight difference, or no, I think it's about 100 kilograms, a couple 100 pounds of weight difference. But really the power and the way that you drive these cars is a completely different ball game. So it would be interesting to see PJ Hyatt in that car. If, we're talking hypotheticals here, of course, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to see him jump in a pool that's too deep. I'll just say that much. So maybe as a one-off, like the Rolex 24, or even as an endurance driver, that would be really exciting. But going up against some factory GTP programs for the rest of the season when you only have one other driver in the car, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
how that will play out.
It's certainly a really good point. PJ has been impressive in the P2, and that doesn't mean that it's going to translate over in any form to the GTP, but he started off running Rexy as well in that Porsche and GTD, and then made the step up to LMP2, which is a large jump as well. So if PJ set his mind to it, I'm sure he could. I'm sure he could impress everybody. But yeah, this is gonna be a fun story, I think, to watch. We've talked, and we're gonna be talking about a little bit more doom and gloom on this show, if you want to call it doom and gloom. But this is certainly one of a fun story for us to follow here in the next few months as the season winds on.
Yeah. Okay. As long as there's no other dartboard or darts you want to throw on the board for potential customers you might be seeing over in the IMSA Championship next year with the 963.
Well, I mean, it's the Rain Race podcast car, right? That's what we're doing. Yeah,
not yet. Not it's coming someday.
I'll have to pull the change out of the couch for that one.
Maybe Asian Le Mans series. If we do the Pro-Am, but then you got to fight over who's the pro and who's the am. And with this lineup, I don't really know if there's a pro. So
I'll take the hit. I'll be the am. It's okay.
I guess we'll start comparing iRacing results and see where it goes.
I'll even go a step further. I'll be the spotter. Okay, I'll be the spotter. I don't want to crash the car.
Get me a co-driver. All right, let's get more serious here. Let's continue talking about the GTP class over in IMSA. Let's talk about the headliner story for the show. It's in the title. This is a story that is still definitely active. It's been getting released in bits and pieces. This whole started with a report from Marshall Pruitt over in Racer, which then got picked up by Daily SportsCar, about the ending of partnership between Team RLL, Rahal Letterman Lanigan, and BMW, which of course is a partnership that's been going on for 17 years now, back to 2009 in the American Le Mans Series. This was, as I said, something that was reported by Marshall Pruitt first. BMW has gone out and since confirmed that will be the case, although we don't have confirmation I don't believe we have confirmation from BMW yet on who will be picking up that program in IMSA next year, although we do have reports on who is likely to be stepping over there. So let's talk about what we know so far, at least. As I mentioned, this is something that we've heard rumors about for a few months at this point. In fact, we talked about this exact story back when it was first rumored earlier in the season. I think around
Long
maybe after
Beach?
Long Beach, I was thinking.
Yeah.
Was probably when we started to hear about this. And I know you, not to say that you were wrong or anything, but I know you chalked this up to this is standard procedure for how
I'm
BMW
never
evaluates their
wrong.
programs. And I wouldn't read too far into this quite yet. Um, I was a little bit more skeptical because I was looking at that and saying, well, this is really the first time we've had this story reported, though. And if they're reporting it, then what makes this different than any other year? Um, of course, you and I have been a little bit critical about that program this season. They had probably some of the best one lap ultimate pace at the beginning of the season, first few races. They were on a qualifying on pole hot streak for the beginning of the season, although always sort of fell second fiddle to Porsche in those races where they qualified on pole. And you and I were wondering, what does BMW need to do to convert what has been strong pace, at least in qualifying, into race wins? And I know at certain races we've been critical of RLL. Certain races we've put our hands up and said, I don't know what the problem is with that car, but it just isn't as strong over the course of a race. Anyways, bringing it back sort of to the story here a little bit. Again, got confirmation from BMW that this will be the last season of that partnership over in IMSA, and that with next year they'll be moving on to somebody else. Now, the team that has been thrown around most frequently, the one that I guess makes the most sense logically, would be Team WRT, of course, running that program over in the World Endurance Championship. They're still chasing down a race win with that program in its second year right now. But overall, I know you and I have talked about WRT being a very capable team, although they might not be helped out quite as much with one lap pace over in the World Endurance Championship as they are in IMSA for one reason or another. Leave it there. I know they're the one team that's been thrown around a little bit for picking up this program next year. If that were the case, I'll say one thing. I don't think people realize how many programs WRT has under their belt right now. I know they just built a new team base over in Belgium a couple years ago, I think at this point. Massive facility that they have over there near Liège. But they are responsible for more racing programs than you think. And I had that made very clear to me when I was over at the Nürburgring 24 enjoying some dinner as to exactly how much they are responsible for behind the scenes. So them picking up an additional program over in IMSA full time, you got to expect probably 2 cars potentially continuing there. Would be a huge undertaking from them. Not to mention the fact that, again, this is a team that's based in Belgium. So if they were to make that step over to IMSA, what does that look like? Do they purchase a base over here in the United States to handle stateside programs? Or do they try to operate everything out of there? I don't think you really can.
No, no, no,
I
no.
don't think it's reasonable at all to operate out of their current base. So very interested to see where that would leave this program for next year, if it were to come to fruition. And I've been rambling for a little bit here. I'm going to toss the mic over to you to give some of your thoughts on all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to continue on that thought about, we've seen lots of the European teams that have come over and run in North America in recent years partner up, of course, with an existing racing program in North America, whether that be, United Autosport, they joined up with JR3 Racing, who used to run, you may remember them from the LMP3 days. They ran an entry there. So United Autosport is being run hand in hand with JR3. We have, we saw Inter Europol make the come over last year and partner up with with PR1, and that was maybe a bit forced on them because there wasn't a grid spot necessarily that they would be able to take to be on the full season line. Full season grid, but then they piggyback off that and they get their own entry for this season. So there's been some other instances as well, but I think it would make a lot of sense for WRT to partner up with an existing program in the WeatherTech Championship. There's plenty of teams that could be capable of an undertaking like that, but there's one that kind of sticks out in my mind as a team that's been interested in running, in stepping up the programs that they've had and expanding further, and that would be Pratt Miller Motorsports. I wonder if that would be a logical kind of next step for WRT to have that entrance into North America and help establish themselves. And the same thing for Pratt Miller, get some of that experience of working with one of these super top high-end, LMDH, manufacturer, essentially they're running the manufacturer program, get some experience there and then be able to later apply that to a program of their own. That could be a partnership, pure speculation. But that things like that could make a lot of logical sense. Dove in the chat mentions, Chip Ganassi Racing could be another one as well. Although there's a couple, there's other programs that Chip Ganassi Racing may be in pursuit of that are on the horizon as well. That would ultimately play into all of this. But yeah, at the end of the day, really unfortunate, to see yet another program in IMSA with such a massive question mark surrounding it. It's the third year in a row we've had a program that's ran at the top level and have an announcement mid-season that they're not going to be on the grid essentially next year. I suppose there's still maybe a path that we could see RLL in some capacity on the IMSA grid, but we saw it with Meyer Shank a couple of years ago, Chip Ganassi Racing last year, and now RLL. It's unfortunate to see some of these teams that have been ingrained in the sport for so long, going through this. But at the end of the day, it is a business ultimately, and if this news tells me anything, can I make my Petit Le Mans prediction now? Because one of those BMWs is definitely winning Petit Le Mans, right? We had it with Meyer Shank 2 years ago, Chip Ganassi Racing last year. It's going to be a BMW this year. But on a serious note, disappointing for for all of this uncertainty for RLL, especially when it did seem like they took a really big step forward with that program this year. Weren't able to translate that into a win yet, but definitely the most competitive that we've seen that BMW stateside. So unfortunate on that front, but it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Stateside, there's no guarantee that we could see the BMWs on the IMSA grid period next year. Hopefully we do, but little bit of uncertainty there for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point at the end, because it is worth noting that none of this is confirmed yet. A lot of this is still up in the air, including what we can see from this program next year in IMSA. Whether that's just a scaled back Michelin Endurance Cup program, whether it's scaled back to one car. A lot of questions still to be answered there. I do think it's interesting that you brought up specifically Pratt & Miller Motorsports, because not that it's pure speculation like you said, but I know you and I were both talking about why were they making that step up to LMP2 this year. This is a team that has been historically connotated to the Corvette racing programs, where they still do, of course, run those programs over in IMSA. But then making the step up to LMP2, I know made both you and I curious when they announced it as to what their full long-term intention was. Did they want to try to partner up with with a hypercar manufacturer to maybe run a customer car? Did they want to scale up and try to run a car with a factory effort in some capacity? Maybe this would be a good place for something like that to slot in. So I'm not sure. I don't know. It hasn't been reported anywhere else to my knowledge that is a possibility. But I'm glad you brought it up because I know it's something you and I had said from day one. And to me, it just makes sense for a team like that, whether it's PMM or not, to pick up something like this, at least as a support role.
It would make a lot of sense from both sides too, right? WRT, this would be their entrance into the North American space, and then like you said, Paul Miller Racing, a lot of valuable things that you could learn from a program like WRT.
Pratt and Miller.
What did I say?
Paul Miller.
Paul Miller. Well, hey,
maybe Paul Miller also. Who knows?
Maybe Paul Miller could step up and run the BMW. I mean, they're already a BMW program, so too many PMMs.
Yeah,
no, I guess that's PMR, but close enough.
It's PPM, PMM. Yeah. I don't know if there's a whole lot else to talk about on this one. This is something that we'll definitely be hearing more about over the coming weeks / months. And of course, we'll be talking about it when we know more. But again, we talked about it with Porsche. We'll talk about it here as well. Another manufacturer that at least we're uncertain about the future with over in IMSA. And it's unfortunate to say that because, of course, we have new manufacturers coming in the next couple of years. We've got Ford expected to be making an IMSA program debut probably around 2028. Genesis, I know, is coming in around that same time. Should be actually 2027 for Genesis. And then McLaren.
We never even mentioned that coming out in all of the news about Porsche, or the questions about Porsche, that apparently Penske has had some discussions with Ford about that program, which
I knew about that. I didn't bring it up. I'm not sure yet
because it was such a small footnote in a lot of these articles. Yeah, it was. That was certainly interesting.
Yeah. But I guess we'll follow the story as we get more about it.
We shall. Well, I was going to say, we're probably going to hear about it. What's the date today, or what's the day of the week? But it's a Thursday that we're recording this on, so we're probably safe from news tomorrow.
Yeah.
Famous last words.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to jump back over to the chat to try to get some questions or some of the comments that were thrown around while we were talking about the races as well. Couple of frequents in the chat here. Mr. Waffles, thanks for tuning in again. Was talking about oh boy, we're going back to the negatives here, aren't we? Talking about the WEC race at Sao Paulo, saying I tuned out about halfway through. Sad because we have this great field of cars and it's being ruined by those 3 letters. I'm going to flip-flop all season long about talking about BOP because, it's such a complex issue right now in the WEC that I think I've been saying since Spa, really, that I'm not confident in their ability to do it properly with the hypercars right now. And I'm actually really glad, although I suppose not surprised, that David Flory was the one to back me up on that, because he basically came out and said pretty much the exact same thing, where there's a fundamental issue with the process right now, at least in the hypercar class, that this new system that they've implemented this year has been way too inconsistent. I'm not going to dive deep into that tonight. It's not the time. It's not the place to do it. But on the other hand, I can look at some of the criticism of BOP this year and say that maybe it's been too critical. The issue I've seen at some races is that the cars are actually, I think, closer than some people are giving them credit for. And yet, because one team was consistently coming out on top for the beginning of the season, being Ferrari, AF Corsa, I think that we were getting, a lot of negative press there, that some of it I think was blown out maybe a little bit too much. like Spa, I think was a good example of that, where you had a race that I think was closer than people made it out to be. So I will, and some days, depending on the moon and the tide of the ocean, be a staunch defender of BOP, and then some days I will be a harsh critic. And we'll see. I really hope we get some more positive news on that next year, because we've not been seeing the greatest press for that system in the hypercar class this year. But seeing the live timing, this is Andrew Kissinger in the chat, seeing the live timing just to have manufacturers running 2x2 by 2x2 is not great. I saw a couple of people posting about that where, break out the sarcasm and say, okay, we've got 2 Cadillacs, we've got 2 Porsches, we've got 2 Peugeots, we've got
we had the one
Toyotas
BMW in there.
Yeah, BMW is breaking it up, but only because the 15 car retired.
Yeah.
And there is, when you get situations like that, that is definitely where people start chirping on social media. So
not a good look.
Yeah. Congrats to Cadillac and Lexus. The old dog's still competing. Yeah, we keep giving kudos to that Lexus for being almost 10 years old now. It came out in 2017. 0 Evo upgrades on that car, whilst every other manufacturer is coming out with an Evo car every 2 or 3 years. So there you go.
Victory Lane sounded good in Sao Paulo, that's for sure. Both of those cars sound quite nice. So I think the Lexus is a V8 as well. Sounds beautiful.
Yeah, naturally aspirated V8s taking the victory in both classes there.
It is 10 years old, so that was kind of the one that was still much more common 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. Commenting about what I said with Porsche, where they sort of don't hold on to a prototype program for that long, I think the only program they stuck with is in the 962. To a point, yes, but I also think you can look at the 962 and think that that's probably the direction we're going to see the 963 head, where the tail end of that program was heavily customer focused as well. So if I'm looking at everything I see right now, that's the direction I see the 963 program going. I don't know about the WEC, and I'm really glad you brought that up, Stu, because I never even thought about the fact that if we don't have 2 factory cars on the grid, can we see a 963 at Le Mans at all? Who knows? Time will tell, I guess. But that will be a very, very interesting question, because they're the only manufacturer right now that really has proper customer racing with their prototype.
Yep.
You can look at Ferrari. I chuckle a little bit, but if we're talking proper customer programs, it's really only been Porsche. And given how much of a staple customer racing has sort of been with the much cheaper LMDH cars in particular, above the Le Mans hypercars, I would be a little bit shocked if they were tossed to the side entirely over in the WEC over the decision that the factory program makes. So
yeah,
I will keep my eyes peeled to that. I'll say that much.
It would be an interesting time, that's for sure. There'll be some Thursday news stories breaking, I bet.
Yep. They did it with Acura as well, and then immediately that was followed up by Honda is also like that. So with is this talking about the factory programs? I'm trying to think of what this was in reference to.
They did it with Acura as well. Maybe Penske.
Penske. Well,
yeah. Or
that's a good
winning
point,
with Acura,
because they did the same with the DPI program, right?
Yeah.
One Daytona, they won Sebring with the Acura, right?
Oh, I think they won a lot with the Acura, right? They definitely
won the championship for sure. They won Daytona for sure.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I'm just trying to remember if they won Sebring.
They probably did.
But then Honda is also like that. Makes me think that's something different.
Well, I think that's kind of piggybacking off of like Honda Acura, maybe. Kind of Waffles and Dove kind of merging those together. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, in terms of Honda, though, continuing, because Honda is always... I mean, they've always kind of had a factory effort, though. At least over in IMSA, at least recently, they've been continuing with... Well, because
Yeah.
when Penske left, they shifted over
Yeah.
to Shank, and I guess it depends if you want to classify Shank as factory. Really, I know the
Yeah, they are.
'93 car this year is factory.
I think I think we classify Shank as factory this year. Like they're running both of those cars.
Yeah, but I'm talking like DPI Shank,
Mm,
2023 or
yeah,
2022.
factory. That would be like factory supported, right?
Yeah,
As opposed to a pure factory team.
yeah. Ran the last race of the season in 2005 and then full season in 2006 with the R Spider. Thank you. Again, I should have known that. I'm a bit ashamed of myself.
Box of Crabs, that's a new name, but definitely a memorable one.
What about Chip Ganassi Racing? Do they want in? I certainly think they want in, and there's no shortage of programs that they could find themselves in. You've got to look at some of the teams that are coming in soon. We've got, of course, Ford popping in. We've got McLaren. We've got Genesis. Ganassi's been linked to a few of those manufacturers, and the question is where they end up running. Do we see all three of those manufacturers run in IMSA? If so, when do they pop up on the grid in IMSA? All three of them are WEC first. So does Ganassi maybe go run a program over in the World Endurance Championship? I think that's a bit less likely, but I would imagine we're going to see Chip Ganassi Racing back on the IMSA grid with a prototype in due time. The question is just with who and when. And right now, I don't even know if I have a guess at that.
Me neither. Best guesses are going to be, Genesis, Ford. Yeah. Not McLaren, though, right? We know that. That's going to be United.
Yeah, I mean, you would assume,
or McLaren, yes. IndyCar, or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, IMSA is the question that I'm more uncertain about, really.
Oh, definitely.
Because United over in the WEC for sure. But,
well, I mean, United has the presence in IMSA now, although it is with
it's not like
satellite team kind of.
Yeah. So,
but McLaren, there's the McLaren IndyCar shop.
Yeah.
There's presence.
But who
there.
owns that? It's not United.
It's not United, but Zach Brown owns United, and Zach Brown owns the IndyCar program.
That's a good point. Right.
There's my link between the two. So we'll see.
We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. We're gonna sit here and run our mouths thinking that this makes a lot of sense, but we know nothing.
Yeah. Have you seen the GRGT? Many times. We've seen it on track in testing capacity. We have not seen it on track in any official form yet.
What is the GR? Is this the new
Toyota/Lexus for next year?
Oh, that's the name of it?
I presume.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know what they're officially calling it, but that's just the name we're going with for now, I guess.
Yeah.
But expecting to see that car on the grid next year, although who knows, because the details around that program for how long it's been around in testing have not advanced a ton in recent months. So,
yep.
We'll see if they're on the grid next year, I guess.
I mean, you got Mr. Waffles here. Mr. Waffles was at Goodwood, the Goodwood Festival of Speed. He says that he saw it go up the hill at Goodwood, along with the new Lamborghini GT3. I didn't know that the Tamburello...
Not the whatever. Tamburello.
What is it called?
The Terramio? That's not right either, I don't think. But it's not Tamburello. That's a corner in Imola.
Yeah. What I wanted to call it, the musical instrument, like the tambourine.
The tambourine?
That was the first thing that came to my mind. So
we actually, since our last episode, we did get a look at what that car looks like, which we didn't really talk about in this, but looks an awful lot like a Hurricane. I'll just say that.
Yeah, it does. It's a glorified Evo.
Yeah, with unfortunately without a V10 in the middle of it anymore. So
yeah, unfortunately.
What are you gonna do about that?
Oh, Mr. Waffles wasn't there in person. Saw it go up the hill on YouTube. We're gonna say you were there in person.
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
leave it there.
Well, it's a bucket list event for me. Yeah, sure. Goodwood's a bucket list event for me someday for sure. So maybe you'll be in the same boat.
Tamburello.
Give me a break. Thoughts on Jenson Button retiring from racing? Yeah, that was also a smaller, I shouldn't even say smaller. We're talking F1 world champion here who's racing up in the hypercar category with the team that just won this past race and was on the pole for Le Mans, retiring from the World Endurance Championship at the end of the season, to spend more time with family, which of course that's a very admirable thing for him. He's had a very long and illustrious racing career, dates back multiple decades. I think he started F1 around 2001, I want to say.
Yeah, it was somewhere around then.
So a lot of success for him, of course, as I mentioned, Formula One world champion. Sure, he would have loved to have been able to check Le Mans off the list in terms of a race win, but we've seen him race at Le Mans in a variety of different cars, from the BR1 back in the day, racing the Garage 56 Camaro in 2023, racing with Jota, of course, this year. And who knows, maybe we'll see him on the grid as an extra driver in the future for Le Mans, a one-off. But
he did say full time, so definitely leaving the door open there.
Yep.
But it makes sense too. I mean, he's reached the true pinnacle of racing now. He's
the end of the ladder. Level. The support series is complete. The feeder series ladder is complete.
Exactly. He's collected them all. Was it Thanos collecting all of the
Infinity Stones?
Exactly. Yep.
You're on a roll here, man.
Oh, I am. You know that we've been recording for a while once it gets to this point. So
I'd keep an eye on the Asian Le Mans series next year, because the one thing that Porsche didn't want for hypercar in Asian Le Mans series was to not have much of a market. Trying to think so you're insinuating, I would assume, that the Porsche is going to have a presence in customer racing over in the Asian Le Mans series, is the way I'm going to take that, but do correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, the whole thing with the Asian Le Mans series
I think what he's trying to say is that Porsche may have been worried about it being like a spec Porsche class. I feel like I remember hearing about this a little while ago.
Sure, and that's sort of where I'm going with this, is that by the sounds of things, the ACO themselves are only expecting about 2 or 3 hypercars in that class, at least for its first season next year. Now, to me, you look at that, we know it's customer only, and customer racing, unfortunately, with these hypercar formulas has not been as prevalent as we might have hoped going in a few years ago. Really, I look at that championship as a place you want to race in hypercar if you want to have an invite to race in the hypercar class at Le Mans, maybe. But apart from that, it doesn't sound like there's a massive demand for it. So 2 to 3 cars for the first season. We'll see if we see a variety of cars there. I know like Glickenhaus and Van Wall have both said, yeah, we'll look into that if there's a market for it, but who knows if the customers will be there for it. And I'm interested in it myself. I'll say that much.
It sounds like JDC might be interested in putting their second car into that next year, so could be a possibility as well. The Banana Boat goes international.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe that's the ticket they need to go race at Le Mans.
That could be exactly it, because it's going to be difficult for them to win the IMSA GTP championship. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. All right. I think we've done it again. We've got to the hour and a half, and on command. Let's see what we've got coming up here. We've got IMSA up at Road America next, right?
Yeah, that's in a few weeks. So I guess it's 2 weeks from today is when that kind of gets underway. So, or 2 weeks from tomorrow, I guess August 1st is when it gets underway. So,
yep.
Of course, in
the WEC, we're taking a little bit of a break now after all the hype and glitz and glamour of Le Mans, and then going to Sao Paulo. We're now off for the next 6 or 7 weeks. It's the weekend after Labor Day weekend this year. It's the second full weekend of September. We'll be seeing those cars on track at COTA. So we got quite a break to to unpack some news in between now and then. So we'll try to get an episode in 2 weeks from now, I'll say, to preview the IMSA weekend at Road America. Who knows? Maybe by that point we have some more information on BMW's plans for GTP next year. We'll discuss some of that as well. And of course, any of your questions as well. We will get to those during that next episode. So, closing thoughts from you before we wrap things up.
Yeah, our doubleheader, our conflict weekends are now in the rear view mirror for 2025.
Yep, until next year.
Until next year. Yeah, looking forward to the rest of the summer and what that's going to bring. And it's always it's a nice feeling when a race weekend is over, a heavy, busy race weekend is over, but man, your mind just immediately turns to looking forward to the next one. So the countdown's on. 2 weeks until we get our next fix.
Yep. And we hope to see you there. So for tonight, or whatever time you're listening to this show, I want to say thank you to everybody who tuned in, whether you're here live or on a podcast platform. 2 weeks, we'll be back to preview Road America and more. Hope to see you all there. Take care.